都没声音。好，再来玩一下了那个 Amnesia The Dark Descent 失忆症黑暗 OE。原本是想要玩续作啦，因为这一波我有全破了，玩了大概7小时左右。我想说，后来有追加减中，然后还有那个成就，也想说顺便解一解好了。然后就刚刚搞画面搞老半天，怎么又没画面 ？OK， 有了。然后而且它不知道为什么它没办法去视窗化，它只能要缩到很小，它才会视窗化。就现在是720P 的画面而已，所以可能有点糊啊。好吧，我们来开始。搞大概半个小时左右。自定义的话，应该不会想玩吧？自定义大部分都 jump scare， 不是很喜欢。这部我喜欢的地方，它是它追逐战是比较有紧张刺激感，就是会有点吓人，可是不会到突然惊吓那种，就不是很喜欢。这种还 OK。然后难度的话，应该普通就好了吧？这个是困难模式有点折磨人，不是很想玩。对，虽然说全部过了。好，那就开始吧。那时候是看霹雳牌玩的，然后想说玩了一下，还不错。看他有玩的还蛮有趣的样子。
Don't forget, some things mustn't be forgotten. The shadow hunting me. I must hurry. My name is Daniel. I live in London at Mayfair. What have I done? This is crazy. Don't forget. Don't forget. I must stop him. Focus.
My name
is I am Daniel.
虽然是一款老游戏，可是没办法，1080P，这画面超级糊的。然后整体玩下来，恐怖感的话是还好，就被追而已。然后里面比较有惊吓感是那个有一个窗户，然后没什么地方可以躲，那只能被追杀，只能直接跳出去。
Hi, my name is Thomas Grip, and I'm one of the.
有点糊，哇天啊！然后后来看了一下 Beauty 派，他也是从那个位置跳出去，大家都从那边跳出去，不知道是故意的、啊，不知道是游戏内刻意设定的还是怎样。
The name of this level is Rainy Hall, and it's supposed to be a combination of atmosphere setter and.
等一下，我不要开这个官方说明好了。哦，哈哈，解说，好，也可以留着啊，不要开就好。简洁。
Tutorial for the player. We wanted the player to start the game in a slow way so they could settle in and get used to how the game works. Amnesia is not a game with constant action happening all the time, and we wanted to have a constrained map where the player gets.
哇，这个会晕呢。低解析度加上这样子超级晕，我会这边会倒一次。OK， 正常了。霹雳派是很喜欢拿起来丢。这一款不错的地方就是它东西可以转，怎么转去了？ 记得可以转向，奇怪。嗯。哎呀，怎么逃出去了？等一下，说明呢？说明怎么不见呢？ OK，R 按住可以转，主要是来吸引怪物。再一个难受的地方就是很晕，扫把，哇，有点黑。 现在有点黑哦，看不太清楚。这样子。有血迹，应该是怪物。也跑起来。 有人在旁边跑的声音，听起来像在船上啊。然后血喷到处都是，也是蛮神奇的。不是应该拿到灯油吗？手灯的声音。 瞬间关灯。等一下，往前有点难受，头好晕哦。
This is one of the first level that we created for the game, and it was initially part of the archives level, which we will reach in a bit. Amnesia started out with a pretty different design, and when we redesigned it, the maps did not fit. This caused us to split them up and scatter them out. So in the first design, after this corridor, the archives level was supposed to follow, and the room lying there now was built much later. In fact, the first designs did not have Daniel waking up with an amnesia at all. And it was actually added later on. In the first story draft, Daniel still had hidden memories, but he was unaware of this at the start of the story. However, as we redesigned things, we found the waking up with amnesia thingy, although a bit cliché, much more fitting.
为什么要让它晃来晃去？就是要制造一种头晕目眩的氛围感。强制转头。
Hi there, my name is Luis Rodero. The editors themselves went through a lot. Hi there, my name is Luis Rodero. I'm mostly the tool programmer, level scripter at times, and perhaps the main reason why the rest of the core team at Fictional Games is pretty much forced to speak English at our internal meeting, as I am the only non-Swede here. Now, what a Spaniard is doing with a bunch of Swedish guys is a whole different story we won't be discussing today. By the way, I will be talking mostly about tools and scripting. Hope you like.
有点像德国人讲英文。
The editors themselves went through a lot of design changes during the development. Not that many in visual appeal as in internal stuff.
OK， 它好像越低就会越晃。
This happened mostly because at the beginning we only knew the basic stuff that needed to be in them, and as they grew in features and functionality, they started to kind of fall apart. Mostly due to my big lack of previous experience in projects like this. Right now, aloud, what the hell still sounds in my head when I look at some parts of the code, but I am still proud of them. They can also get a bit buggy at times, but hopefully this won't happen again in the future. And I already got some nice ideas for the next iteration of the tools.
卡关了吗？有够糊的。前面应该是不会有什么东西啊，后面才会有。哦，有的没拿。超级油灯，门才开。怎么开？此时突然转头。
Hello everyone, my name is Mikael, and I'm the writer for Amnesia, The Dark Descent.
这一句
I think we can all feel the story kick-starting as we finish the letter from Daniel. The game itself is just filled with confusion, and I think we're really doing the player a service keeping it simple in the beginning. Basically try to take your revenge on Alexander. That is the premise of the game.
I wish I could
You don't
ask
really
you
need to dive any deeper than that, but hoping that the player will care about the story, they have the entire game in front of them to
God
decide
willing,
if
the
they
name
think killing
Alexander of
Alexander is
Brandenburg still
justified or
invokes
not.
bitter anger in you. If not, this will sound horrible. Go to the inner sanctum. One last thing. A shadow is following you. It's a living, redeem us both, Daniel. Descend into the darkness where Alexander...
哦，这对灯笼还是会消耗，所以那个怪兽都是大家看到的幻影。 那边看都是纯英文，所以有些剧情看不懂，所以有一些是因为那个老头是我们要刻意去杀他。该这边开始才要开始追逐战。后面还要那解完这一区才有。
Alexander, is it inside the castle?
In a manner of speaking. Come, bring the lamp. You've been to the refinery, have you not?
I don't believe I have. Is it connected to the... what did you call it?
The inner sanctum. My most precious chamber, Daniel. And it lies well beyond the refinery. In fact, it lies beneath the very stone of Brennenburg.
画面闪来闪去。哇，这个影响心智。记得那个虫好像也会影响。
Hello, my name is Mark Nikander. I'm a 3D artist and level creator at Fictional Games. I started out as a helper during Penumbra Overture, and I was finally hired as a full-time artist in the later part of Penumbra Black Plague. The entrance hall was first shown in our first gameplay trailer, and while the layout hasn't changed much, the details certainly have. We build our levels from sets of pieces, in this case, the castle-based set. While the carefully planned set pieces made level building very easy, the levels became very similar and we had to make special pieces to the level. Now, 1.5 years later, the special pieces make up about half of the pieces in the castle-based set.
那个是主宰的声音。其实可以稍微点一下。
The particle editor is also a fine part of the tool bundle, and it is what we use to create particle effects for maps and events. We use particles to do nice effects like the flames in torches and the smoke that comes out from them. All we have to do is add one or more particle emitters, set up some parameters like starting position and speed, on all sorts of fadings in size, color or speed. It's funny how you can simulate all kinds of effects with such simple elements. I very much recommend you to try it yourself.
Aqua Force.
突然变超大声。那是炼金术师。来定期开一下灯。
In early concepts, this was meant to be a sort of wine testing room and directly connected to the wine cellar. The reason for the whole wine testing thingy was that we planned on having more laboratories in later levels, so a lab here as well felt kind of strange. Then things changed and only one lab was left in the design, so we changed the name to laboratory instead. The whole wine testing facility got to be made dangerous as it always felt kind of strange anyways.
那边做这个要记点一下，为什么一直晃？所以应该是要拿到化学药剂才行。
Scattered throughout the game, you can see some signs written in Latin. The reason for using it is that it was considered a language of culture and science, as most scientific and philosophy authors wrote their works and treatises in it. As we are dealing with a castle dwelled by a pretty smart guy that has been around since the Renaissance period, Latin all around the place was something we should expect. Being the only guy in the team that had a direct contact with Latin, in high school to be more precise, well, it was kind of logical that any translation to be done would have my name on it. Translating stuff into Latin was kind of strange and fantastic to do. At first I had a classic Latin dictionary, so if I had to translate any modern term, I would have to track its etymology down to the Latin equivalent, or look for a synonym or similar expression that had a direct translation. Then I had the luck to come across some dictionary for modern stuff online that addressed most of this stuff for a huge lot of terms, so it couldn't have come in a better time. Some days I would have Sebastian dropping a list of 9 or so entries to be translated, and before finding this dictionary, it was quite a lot of work. On a side note, we even had a choose your Latin poll on a couple entries, just to pick the one that sounded better for everyone. Results were pretty unanimous, by the way. For some final words on this, I must confess that, while I was pretty good at this in high school, that was like 15 years ago. So right now I'm not 100% sure translations are correct at all, but I took the time to make them at least plausible, so my apologies go in advance to any Latin guru up there playing the game, as I myself get on the verge of losing my temper when I see stuff like this obviously made up.
台词有够长，也不是台词啊，那个解说有够长，可是没有中文就很可惜。 这边开始就有追逐战。
16th of May, 1839. The unflinching African sun has continued to plague our expedition. Later that evening, we uncovered a passage beneath the dunes leading. Tomorrow, I shall lead the men into the ancient structure, hoping to reach the burial.
觉得没东西。
To finish this little overview of our tools, I must mention the material editor, available both standalone and built into the other editors. The program itself is very simple to use. You have some material types defined by the engine, and you can throw in textures to be used for diffuse, normal maps, height maps, as well as some variables to control specific parameters for a material type. When I was writing it, I could just stare while the preview model rotated around itself and the parallax mapping effect was on when testing, just for fun. Another piece of the toolset is the model editor, used to create the entities you are interacting with while playing. Basically, we take a model and set up some parameters like physical bodies, joints, and user-defined variables. We can also attach sub-entities to them, like lights, particle systems. When an entity is finally set up, it is ready to be placed in a level using the level editor. Examples of entities here are doors, lamps, most furniture, critters.
Oh,
17th of May, 1839. My hands trembled today. I took some men and ventured into the dark, ancient passage we uncovered. The crudely carved passage confused me. It looked much older than the 4th century structure we had. I was trapped.
那个箱子下来，书下来。也是跑十里真是挺麻烦。其实这样子玩的话，干脆我就玩困难模式好了，因为好像困难模式会比较需要保持理智，普通模式可以不用保持。有听到声音，不知道是哪里来。锁上。怪物在哪边出现去了，我忘记了。哦，这背景这个后面是有点难受。
When I started writing, I had only outlined the framework for the story and the first few levels in the game design document, so I ended up finalizing a lot of material for the first levels, and then when those were done, we planned out the last 2/3 or so. This had a funny effect since I had to not only cater to the story, but to stay true to the stuff I've written for the first levels. Usually you can go back and forth while writing and change things, but if you have already recorded voices, you really shouldn't because of the costs. So the first text really shaped the rest of the material in an interesting way, and made them matter in a way I hadn't thought about. I really like how this thickens the story elements, as I am able to jump back into the material and keep using and reinforcing certain concepts. Agrippa is of course the most extreme effect of this method, which grew from a small reference to becoming one of the most important characters in the game.
There isn't much to be done about the wars. We should reinforce weak structures. The ground will tremble and there's a risk everything will cave in on us, especially downstairs. Here, and there. Let's get the servants working on it.
记得这边看到什么东西？哦，没来着啊！好，过去，弹下来了。
17th May, 1839.
换一个地方。
After pounding the unforgiving stone wall for what seemed like an eternity, I realized it was hopeless. I was trapped. I fell to the ground, gasping for air, trying to focus. That's when I saw a faint blue shimmer. My weakened body was heavy to carry, but I managed to push myself toward the enchanting light. It was waiting for me. Enclosed in dark nothingness, I felt myself drawn to the mystic light. I reached out, closing it in my hands. The faint glow escaped my fingers and began to spark brightly and spirit me away, unlocking alien memories of spiraling towers, endless deserts, and impossible geometry. The next thing I can remember is the grating sound of stone being lifted, the voices of the Arabs pulling me to safety, and grasped firmly in my hands was the broken pieces of a most peculiar relic.
刚那个字跟那个亮度都一样，完全看不到东西。应该是被堵住了。是要拿东西砸吧？有点忘记了。没错，然后就会引怪出来。
You have to be swift when you activate the first one. You hear that? If it stops, you'll have to start over.
Isn't all this a bit excessive?
You can never be too careful, Daniel.
有听到声音的，很明显，那个涂出一个颜色，大家想去摸。先把这边看完再说。直接卡吧。拿钥匙应该开始出怪了吧？奇怪，从后面才出吗？啊，有了有了。你来吗？来了。救命！ 这样一开始进来的地方。我要从哪个位置出来？好啊，怎么过去？
If you haven't followed our development blog back when it started, you might have missed one of the biggest changes in our production pack. If you haven't followed our development blog back when it started,
不要听，
you
哈哈。
might have
酒窖。还要特意拿钥匙。 这边才开始比较需要。
A major design guideline for us was to give each level a unique theme, something that all puzzles, events, and the general atmosphere was built upon. This makes each level a little piece of the story and theme at large, and also gives them focus so the player is not distracted with too much information. The theme in this level is the strange creatures that lurk in the castle. The player first spots them momentarily in archives, so now is a perfect place to build some fear. There is never any real threat in this level, but it's much darker than any before. There's a constant pressure with boards creaking and the like. The flashbacks also give hints of where strange creatures come from, making all events focused on the level's central theme.
这血是我们的吗？应该不是。我还是去check一下限制。真好下一块啊！握住推，那怎么推啊？哦，再拿东西丢。 这个点的位置刚刚好。把它推掉。哎，这要怎么推掉？ OK， 而且听到 cling 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 的声音。
The basic structure of the earlier levels in the game has been built by me. I have not created the models or anything like that, but I have built the levels with the graphics from the artists using our level editor. This was the very reason for us to create the level editor, as it would allow for the whole team to work on levels, building them from scratch if so needed. For our previous Penumbra games, you could perhaps tweak a level a little bit, but making a whole level was the job for an artist and no one else. In the early days of the Amnesia project, the artists had their hands full with making graphics, and so I was the one building the levels. Looking at the levels now, a lot of things have changed and improved, but the base is still there. Showing that the idea to create the level editor was a sound one of the few things in fact with the Amnesia project that has not been scrapped, reworked or modified heavily.
应该要出怪了吧？OK， 那个点拿应该就出来。我先把这个打开看一下。 原来这边，拿完应该赶快跑吧。该都走完了。 4个，应该含最开始这边拿3个。哎，等一下，那个化学罐啊，少一个。我以为最开始那个也是，还觉得它只是化学罐而已。 门又关起来，这个绿色的东西。
The basic structure of the earlier levels in the game has been built by me. I'm Jens Nilsson, co-founder of Frictional Games. I work mainly with the sound, gameplay and event scripting in Amnesia. For my commentary in this game, I'll jump back and forth between the topics of sound, puzzle creation, and even talk about making this commentary.
哦，这边开始有东西了。
What's happening? Oh, it feels like my chest is going to burst.
My God, Wilhelm, do something!
Accept it. We're not getting out of here.
How can you say that? Alexander, you piece of shit! Let us out of here!
化学攻击吗？然后发觉好像忘记要看那个声音的那个大小 ，OK， 应该是正常的。 被我那个画面挡住。那只有这么后面才出吗？哎呀！有他去哪里去了？直接下雪道。这条路在哪里？
In early concepts, this was meant.
然后体积物，我抖音有个洞在那边，好，倒下来。 这样子，然后我们才要走下水道过去。 是隐藏道具。应该是要走下水道，可是要怎么下去？要插东西。这给搭上去了，切！哦，也要走下水道。上不去。这应该是他幻觉啊，然后我也在攻击他了。我记得这个要用撬棍。这是底箱。
This is one of the many hub levels in the game, and this is a design concept that we started out with in Penumbra. The idea is to give the player some freedom on where to go, but at the same time give a clear objective. In this level, the slime obstacle is the thing that the player needs to get past, and all other levels then have things needed to do so. Slime itself is one of the few puzzles left from the initial designs, and the one I'm probably the least proud of. Now that slime appears all around, it feels... This level was first called Distillery, and if you check the data file, it's still named as such. Now, for some reason I told Mikke, a writer, that it was called Refinery, and the voiceover was recorded with the wrong name. Since it's easier to change a name than a piece of voice data, we had to rename it. I'm glad I said Refinery though, and not King's Hall or Grandma's Vegetable Patch. That would not have been as fitting.
Why is it so dark?
Pay attention, Daniel. It's important that you keep going straight and make sure not to stray.
OK， 来了。真的有点糊啊。
Someone's coming. 1839. It's been more than a month since my last entry. I found my journal.
自动门。鸦片应该是补血的吧。有骨头。还有12个，应该还挺够的。要不要走去哪里？
25th of June, 1839. I feel the need to continue. Yesterday, I took careful measurements and noted Smith.
在后面这边。 可以倒着拿出那个灯油。
The end puzzle with the crank and pulley contraption was a tricky puzzle, not to create or on a technical level, but purely on a noticeable level. We added stuff to the puzzle perhaps 4 or 5 times because after each test session we kept having testers that did not see the piece of wood that you are to break to complete the puzzle. Originally you could only break it, so we added the option to pull it out as well. Then we added a faint light to draw the attention to it, and also tweaked the description of the crank. After that we added so that when you pull the crank there is a bit of dust falling from the piece of wood, and we also did a slight change in the angle of the piece of wood and changed the color and the texture, all to make it as notable as possible. So the question is, did you notice the piece of wood?
这边东西挡住，把它垫起来才行。先挡着，我觉得可以跑进来。想起来了，这个水很烦。
Hello, I'm Mikko Tarmia, the composer from Amnesia: The Dark Descent. You may have heard my music before if you played the Penumbra game series, and I did a couple of tracks for Penumbra Tech Demo too. So this is my 5th project with Frictional Games, and I'm happy to be a part of the team. The Guardian monster has its own musical theme, which you can hear in many situations in the game, even if the Guardian is not physically present. Actually, it's more like a noise sound than a certain melody, and I played it with my bassoon.
这跑去哪里了？
The theme has many forms, and this one is almost a direct sound coming from the instrument.
Oh.
And this noise, which sounds like screaming, is a highly modified version of it.
摇得不过去。这也追逐战感觉。
Creature in the water, affectionately called Lurky here at Frictional Games, did not have a sense of sound. Later on we wanted to add it though, so the player could lure it away by throwing stuff in the water. When I added this, something unexpected happened. Lurky started following me. When you jump on the crate, it hears the sound you make when you land and it goes there to investigate. This was very fun emergent behavior, and I think it made him even more menacing. I also want to add that Lurker was kind of inspired by my favorite movie as a child, Tremors. I guess this early obsession might also explain some creatures in our older games.
那边有东西可以捡吗？没有。哎呀！ 可是没东西可以引它往过去嘞。 可以吃哦。在哪里？哦，在那边，快去吃。这太高。我还要先接。 哦，我要什么时候捡到的？
Hi, I am Tapio, and I made monster sounds and vision sounds for this game. Yeah, I just love this monster. I think it was pretty fun to make because there was underwater sounds as well as sounds from the above. I think I wanted it to sound like a very big monster, but still very fast. And I thought that voice itself needed to be high-pitched screaming because water is splashing around and messing other sounds. Actually, a great example is the attack sound where there is big water splash as it jumps from the water. At the same time, you can hear a short scream sound which is made from the cat sounds. I think it works great. I think other great sound is when it's just eating in the level. You can hear it eating meat and hear the bones crashing under the water. I made the eating sounds by walking in the water and breaking dry wooden sticks. The sound itself didn't need much processing or editing because it sounded almost like you hear now. Well, this is Water Monster, so I recorded lots of water sounds. For example, bubble sounds are made with a watering can, which is sunk in the water. And when it's chasing the player, its movement is made by a big rock, which I just threw in the lake. It feels like it's running after you or hitting its big hands on the water. I think there is lots of power in this monster.
This level is the high point of the lurker build-up, which sort of started in an entrance level with a slide. It's supposed to be a sort of roller coaster ride, and it's designed to be easy enough to be completed on the first try. Yep, it should also be stressful. Many of the things in the level that seems like barely made it are scripted to be that way. But it's nothing to notice because they're blended in.太多只了。我想说慢慢走过去，后面猫一直出来。
字转头。
This is the second hub level of the game, and is supposed to give some contrast to the stressful lurker encounter. We think building up contrast like this is extremely important for the horror mood. Only by seeing a bright level can you appreciate the dark one, and so on. If you do not do this, player will get used to the stuff and the effect will lessen greatly.
啊，先知道他那个指引手啊，这长得超丑的。嗯，跟前面那个场景好像。
You have an ascending room. Will it take us to the inner sanctum?
It will definitely take care of the vertical part of our journey. So, you have ridden an elevator before?
Yes, the Colosseum at Regent's Park has one. It takes you to the gallery where you can view the panorama.
Good. This ride might be a little longer, and in the other direction.
When I first started working on the elevator, I had detailed concept art as base for my work. This is both a blessing and a curse. Concept art saves a lot of time for us artists, as we just have to copy what we see in the picture, but it also takes away some fun parts of our work, as we don't have to design anything ourselves. In this case, the concept art was very detailed and there wasn't much to change. However, I noticed that the roof part on the concept was dark and dull, so that's where I could add details of my own. I added the patterns to fill out the empty space. I wanted them to fit with the eastern feel of the elevator and took inspiration from Arabic windows. In the end, it's not a very big addition, but it adds to the overall impression of the elevator as something exotic that doesn't really fit in with the blue-grey stones of Brandenburg.
In the original pitch, Herbert was a very important character, but it didn't really reflect in the games, so we tried a few different things to incorporate him, but it never really made any sense.
哎，这个地方。哦，不是，我以为是那个跳药房，就是类似这个场景，直接跳出去，对，只要直接跳出去，没地方跑。蛮多东西的复用。为什么那个画面有点糊啊？
This map was one of the most fun to make because of the rooms have more objects than we usually add in the levels. I think the first two rooms was pretty good just because of this, but we can't add this many objects in every room in the game because that would first of all be very demanding on your PC's performance and a lot of our players doesn't have gaming rigs. Secondly, it wouldn't make sense if every room or corridor was a storage. We also try very hard to vary the levels and rooms as much as we can do. This level was also the first time in the game the player had any contact with outside. So for this part I had to make a couple of different wall pieces, a pine tree and a breakable version of the window. And I can talk a little bit more about the breakable window here. When creating breakable objects like this, we have to first of all break the model by splitting parts up and creating pieces. Like on this window, it has a lot of wood parts that are loose after it breaks. Those parts are remodeled into broken versions, and in the broken version of the window they're actually hanging in the air at the same place they were when the window was whole. After modeling those and exporting the model into collado format, which our engine handles, I use our in-house model editor, set each wood part up with a body for collision, and I also add weight for it to behave realistically. I also add material type, in this case wood, and that is so that wood sound is played when the beats hit something. You can also set up more advanced stuff like how it will behave in water, how fast it can travel and how fast the speed will decay, but also a lot of other settings as well. But when that broken version is done, I also set up a special entity of the original window where I set it to break at a certain force, and when that happens another entity will load, this one will disappear. And in this case, we load the broken version of the window. We also set it up so a particle system with glass shards is going to be played as well as a break sound. And as soon as you break that window, and all that is happening, and since you probably threw something at the window, the force of that object will make the wood pieces fly, and not fall straight to the ground as they would otherwise. That is pretty much how we do it with most breakable entities. But of course, creating a particle system and sounds for this is needed too. And in this level, you can also see a lot of props that I made earlier before we started making maps. This is objects like shelves, tables, chairs, paintings, etc. But of course, I didn't make all the objects in this level.
这个讲解讲跳也够久了吧？一些高能部分刚好都跳过。所以他应该是招收一堆人，然后来研究解剖学。可以听到狗的惨叫声。所以看来把这个击碎。他刚才在讲说那个玻璃那个碎掉那个效果。讲半天把一些高能场景都跳过。
The decision to have the player go outside in this map started out as a quick and dirty idea for some sort of puzzle. However, it turned out very nicely, and to see the trees really gives a feeling of being in a castle and not just on some set. The first idea was not even to have the player break the window and just have it open directly instead. But when we added it, we felt it gave a really nice feel and reward for finishing the puzzle. In retrospect, we should have had more moments when the player ventures outside, and it gives this feel of being a part of a larger world.
这个惨叫声应该都是他记忆中的声音吧？我不知道那个解剖是他还是另一个卡住。快点下去！是没拿到钥匙就拿到那个道具而已。
Journal's gone. What would they want with my journal?
In this room, everything is connected to destruction and home. This was Daniel's home as Alexander's guest, and the diary entries are about Daniel being home in London and things falling apart. These sort of connections are not something that we want the player to get. Rather, it should end up in the subconscious and work toward building the mood.
2nd of July,
Also worth noting is this
1839.
focus, as
I received a
explained
letter
in the
today.
commentary
The
of
French
Wine Cellar,
quickly dispatched a
where I
search
want the
party to
player's
look for the
attention on a certain aspect. We hope this makes the story clearer. The idea is to slowly build it up, one part at a time, giving the player time to digest and think about it.
Daniel is a pretty complicated character to write for, as we didn't want the player to feel that they were losing control by having feelings imposed on them. After the amnesia kicks in, everything which is Daniel is essentially gone. The player is the new Daniel, and he should be able to act the way he pleases, and even reject his own background as he discovers it. That is why everything concerning Daniel is flashbacks. Even the diary entries are read as what is being told is happening right now. That is, it is the old Daniel telling the story, and not the player reading it.
3rd of July, 1839. May 17th, the day I was trapped inside. I continued reading the peculiar text. Herbert states his fact. His account confuses me greatly.
If you listen to the music tracks more carefully, you may find that characters have their own musical themes, which can usually be heard when you read papers during the game. These themes appears in many variations, so it's not always so easy to recognize them immediately. And in the end of the game, some of these themes will go quite insane. Oh, and that's Daniel's theme, which you can hear in the game's menu screen. Let me play it to you with piano.
When we
create props, we usually have concept pictures or reference images to look at when modeling the object, just to make sure it stays within the art style that we are going for. When creating a chair, a table, or a bookcase, just to name a few, we usually have to plan the measurements before we get into the game, because having something in the game that isn't the right size can break the immersion. But sometimes you have to cheat that and test it out, because the camera perspective can really trick you. I have the perfect example of the camera tricking you sometimes. Take out the lantern in-game and look at the wall or an object in the same height as the lantern and try guessing how big the lantern will be next to that object. Then walk up as close as you can to that object and compare. If you got a good example out of this, you see that the hand and lantern is in fact very small, but it feels right when it's close to the camera. But we don't want to go on gut feeling on the measurements of every object. That could really get out of hand quickly, and a lot of things could feel out of place. So it's basically a matter of changing the scale if it feels weird. When modeling the prop, we try to make it as close as the reference images as we can, or if you've got a sketch, that is. It's often a quite simple process that usually doesn't take that much time, but it completely depends on what it is and if the sketch we have are detailed. Before giving the model a texture and working on that, we need to create a UV map for it. A UV map can best be described as an image with painted and edited details to it that is wrapped around the object. So the texture for a cardboard box, for example, would look like a box that you have unfolded onto the ground. After the UV map is created, we start to work on the texture. And here, we usually start with adding untouched materials like wood or metal, and these are from free photos found on the internet. We also paint in dirt in corners, highlights on the edges to enhance them. We can also bake and add an ambient occlusion map to the texture, which is basically a process where the computer calculates where the texture should be dark and where it should be light. We often generate a normal map based on certain details in the texture. Normal map uses light to add bumps or dents without using more polygons on the object. For specular maps, we use the red
4th of
channels
July,
for the intensity level of the
1839.
map, and the green
It's
channels
the
determine
ancient
the power
stone
of it.
relic.
After all the textures are done, we export them to collada format and import them to our editors. There, we set material values, create bodies for collision, and stuff like that.
好，那只出来了，开始到处追喽。这边是没走过。哎呦，这好像有老鼠。 记得那个皮被咬吓到的。
Again, there's a lot of elements here working together. Not only does the player enter the darkest level yet, they'll also come up against a dark part of Daniel's memories. We've tried to have all aspects of the level work towards this goal. Hopefully it creates an oppressive and disturbing feel to it.
음, 这里你一定要开灯。 这边解才行。什么都看不到哎、精神这一个在这个位置。
Please let me go. I won't tell anyone. I swear. I just want to go home. No! Get away from me! Leave me alone!
有时候会藏东西在后面。都要休息了。
Everything is gone.
因为物资还蛮多的。是不是要把这个用？要来把它钻开，然后把它这样才能用，是不是？出怪，就是来晃一下就不见。升降梯坐上去休息好了。哎，不对啊，还要进机关室，因为太久。看下面东西。看一下，如果很长的话就算了，在那休息。哎呀，这个我印象是蛮长的。
This is another one of those contrast levels. This time calming the player down for what will happen once the elevator is finally running. The map is still dark though, giving a bit of foreboding for what is about to happen.
这段应该还蛮长的。啊，继续这样吧，念完了，过来休息了。